Hey, welcome back everybody. In this video we're going to talk a little bit about the Firepower 1010 appliance. So I'm technically going to do like an entire series on the Firepower and the Firepower Management Center. So we're going to take a deep long look at all of these devices and how we do certain things. Of course, like we already looked at the the FDM that we saw in one of my previous videos, the introduction to Firepower. We're going to be looking at how to do like a high availability and of course tying them into Firepower Management Center, or in the new lingo, Firewall Management Center. One of the first things we're going to do is we're going to take out, kind of do an unboxing here. I got a brand new Firepower 1010 that I wanted to play with so I can show you guys HA, or high availability. These things are really nice little boxes. As you can see, it's desktop size, it's handheld. You might not be able to see it very well with the packaging on, but I will show you again later. But it has 8 ports, a management interface, 2 console ports, and a regular USB. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but you're going to notice that ports 7 and 8 have PoE. The nice thing about having PoE, you can turn these ports into a switch port for a phone, or you can create a PoE port for, let's just say, a wireless access point. And then you can do all of your wireless or Wi-Fi sub-interfaces, or physical interface for your SSIDs. So yeah, we're going to be taking a look at this. As I said, we already have one, so we're going to be learning how to set it up, get into it, and set the management. Out of the box, it comes with one of the Cisco USB to mini USB connectors so you can get into a console. Silly Liz. And then, of course, a nice big old power brick. Alright, I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to get this thing hooked up, and we can talk about connectivity. So one of the other things I wanted to show you, you're probably looking at the screen right now, I have a whole bunch of Ubiquiti devices. That's mostly just my switching environment. I love these little Ubiquiti minis. These things are awesome. Just a simple little box that is powered by either USB-C, or if you're going to see here on port 1, not sure if you can see it, but it should say PoE in. So technically you could take this little switch here, plug it into port 7 or 8, and it will power the switch. One of the nice things about the Ubiquiti Enterprise switches, you're going to see here I have a few of them. I have the Entraz Office Mini. So this thing is going to connect up to my Game Room Enterprise. So it connects to my game room, and then that connects back to my aggregate. That, of course, connects into the Dream Machine. And that's how we have connectivity, link lights, and I'll be able to get on the network. You'll notice here on the ports for port 1, I have PoE configured, and the profile is all. For those of you that know Cisco, switch port trunk allowed all is pretty much what that means. All means every VLAN. We also have a couple of documentation here. I bought the FPR 1111 NGFW, which means it's installed with the Firepower Threat Defense, or FTD software by default. But you also get an entitlement to the ASA software. So I could technically go onto software.cisco.com, download the ASA software, and install it on this device. You might have known from a previous video I did how to install ASA onto one of these devices. For now, I have my console port connected. I'm going to go into port 5 here, port management, and I'm going to make this part of a port profile. Now, one of the things I need to do, I need to come here and figure out the IP address of my other Firepower. So I have 6.61 is the IP address of the other guy. So I need to put this port profile into 6. Once that's done, I apply changes, and now port 5 on my Mini will be on 6, and we can configure the management. So I also have a network cable here that I'm going to plug into the management interface so we can get into this once it's up and running. So we have that plugged into port 5. And I need to look at console. So if we come in here and do a search for computer management, you'll see here under device manager and ports, we have serial port COM4 ready for us. So let's open up PuTTY in this case, and we'll open up COM4. Once I open up COM4, and let's see about appearance, font, maybe 14, so everyone will be able to see this a little better. I'm going to plug in the power to my firepower, and we can go through the command sequence. It's plugged in, and maybe we'll just run through the setup here, and when it's ready, I'll show you guys how to configure the management interface so we can log into the device. See you in a minute. As you see here, we have an FPR 1010 with 8 gigs of memory. ROM is 1011, and this is FXOS 2.8.1. Not really sure what that means at the moment. It's the firepower devices have multiple iOSs basically. So you're going to see here we're running Linux version 4.1 and FXOS version 2.8. FOX Manager 2.8. We are indeed running Apache with HTTPD. System name is Firepower. And there we go, we're running FTD 6.6.1. Now keep in mind this is a brand new device I just got out of the box, and we're running 6.6.1. So there is a big thing that we do need to talk about when we get into FMC, and of course when we want to put these firepower devices into HA. So HA requires that our devices be at the same FTD level. Now I'll show you in the top tab here, I'm actually running 7.3 on my production firepower. So we're going to do two things. First of all, we're going to look at the update process, so how we can upgrade this thing to 7.3. But I think one of the first things I want to do, after I show you that, of course, is to talk about the FMCV. So we'll talk a little bit first about how to HA two firepower devices, but this will be theory. We won't actually do this with the firepower devices because I want us to run through the firepower upgrade process using FMC, because anyone out there that's running firepower, you're going to want FMC. Firewall Management Center. It's actually pretty cheap, and you license per device. It reaches out to software.cisco.com to get all of its licensing, and can provide that to the devices that are, of course, managed by FMC. So hopefully we won't have any issues there. In a moment, when this thing is done booting up, we'll look at the PM, which is the product manager, which in this case we're going to make it the local manager. And then once we talk about the FMC, then we'll make the FMC the manager. But once we get that done, we also have to talk about how to get the configuration off of an FTD FDM appliance, FDM meaning local manager, and apply that to an FMC instance. Now, I have yet to use that Cisco immigration tool. I have my Firepower 1010 that's currently in use. It's been in use for a while. It's configured and ready to go. So that is something that we will work through in one of our subsequent videos. For now, let's let this thing run through, and I'll see you in a minute. One good thing to notice there, we actually have a hardware-based encryption module, so it's not done in software, even on the 1010 these days. Alright, so here we are at the Firepower login screen. Let's hope everything is as should be with the login of admin, and the password should be capital ADMIN 123 or admin 123. And you're gonna notice here that it requires us to enter a new password. So yes, we are on Fire Linux version 6.6.1, build 91, and we need a new password. So let me put my new password in here. Okay, that was done successfully. Runs through some of the licensing information, and we are at Firepower. Let's hit question mark here. You're going to notice we have a little bit of information, like show system firmware 6.6.1. We mentioned that. Show system, let's do detail. And you're going to notice it really doesn't say anything. What we need to do by default is go to connect, and then we need to go to FTD. Now keep in mind, you can go to local management if you want to, and local management of course gets us into a whole nother set of whatever. So let's do show, and let's just do running config. So you'll see here that it looks a lot like, ASA from command line. Interface management 0 actually has an IP address, 192.168.7.240, a gateway, and of course an IPv6 address. So we could go to this address right now and go directly into FTD. But one of the things I want to do first is connect to FTD. You have to hit enter to display the EULA, and just kind of space through it, understand all of the end user licensing agreement information. Which as of 6.6.1 there are 17, it looks like. Nope. 18. Enter yes or press enter to agree. System initialization is in progress. Please stand by. So one of the cool things here, you actually have what I would say is a setup wizard. Now in this case, I actually want to hit no because I want to do this manually. You must configure at least one IPv4 or IPv6. Well, that stinks. So let's just do DHCP for the time being. We'll probably get that same address, 7.240. Let me bring this up just a little bit. Saving a copy of the run to local disk. Manage the device locally. So we don't have FMC readily available as of right now. So the nice thing is we can come in here and just say yes, and it will create the firewall mode to routed mode instead of transparent. And it should make the management of the device local. So once that's done, we'll configure the management IP address, and we'll log into it and just take a look around. Alright, so you see here we have performed first boot initial config. We hit question mark, and we want to have a whole bunch of commands. So let's see, show. Yeah, that's one of the bad things about this system is it doesn't actually have a table. So you kind of need to know what you're looking for. Yeah, so show network. Yep, 7.240 is still our IP address because it was DHCP. So let's see, configure network. Let's see, we can come in here and do a management interface. Do enable. It should already be enabled, but I really don't want to deal with this right now because that is a major pain. So configure network for IPv4 manual IP address. So 192.168.6.62 because 61 was the IP address of FP01. I have a mask of 23. And of course the gateway 192.168.6.1. Management interface default if omitted. So good there. Configure network IPv4 manual, the IP address, the mask, and then the gateway. Now since the network has changed, we can do show network yet again. Hopefully it will show it being modified. Alright, 6.62. So you're going to see here my NTR FP01, Cisco Secure Firewall Device Manager. Let's go https:// those are forward slashes, by the way. 192.168.6.62 comes with the default certificate from Cisco. And here we go, the Firepower Device Manager. Alright, so you're going to see it's a tiny bit different, going from 6.6.1 to 7.3. Log in here as well. And hopefully we'll be able to see some good differences between... Whoop. Wrong password. Alright, so once again, this is a 1010 threat defense on 7.3069. You're going to notice we have the ability to configure high availability right here. And all of our configuration options as well as monitoring policies and objects. So let's click on 6.6 and see the difference. So the first thing they want us to do when you have a new device is configure the interface management 1/1, ISP gateway, DNS server, NTP, and of course a smart license. Now as this is a new system, I need to provide my serial number to Cisco in order for them to kind of tie the device and tie the licenses I bought together. In this case, let's see, initial access control policy will enforce the following. Rule 1 will trust outbound traffic. Inside to outside is trusted. And block all other traffic, meaning outside to inside is blocked. So the outside interface right now, we could configure it for DHCP manual or off. In this case, I'm just going to set it to DHCP because it kind of wants us to. Don't have internet connection, you can also skip the device setup and start the 90-day eval. This is a good idea for those, you just want to play with it for however many days. You might have to reinstall after 90 or it might still work. Otherwise, the smart licensing is there to provide additional licenses you have paid for. As an example, if we go back over here to my smart licensing, you're going to notice that I have intrusion prevention, malware defense, URL, and AnyConnect the Cisco Secure client. So I actually had to pay for the TMC license that gets me threat defense, malware, and URL, TMC. And then, of course, there's an AnyConnect licensing as well. Essentials, of course, as you see, is perpetual, and the rest are subscription. So yeah, there's Cisco making you subscribe to certain features. In any case, we're back over here. Let's go back to our main page, and everything pretty much looks the same. They've moved some things around. It's called Secure here now, as opposed to, you know, the Cisco logo. But anyway, you're going to notice I'm running 6.6.1, and if we wanted to update our system, we could come over here and browse to a file that will allow us to update the system. The reason I wanted to show you this specifically was because there's a lot of Cisco software out there that doesn't have the browse option. You actually have to have a repository, like a web server, an SCP, SSH server, FTP server. You'll notice that when it comes to ICE. FMC is a little bit better. They don't have, you know, those little nifty requirements that actually makes you work to get it done. But anyway, this is 6.6.1, brand new install. If we look at objects, you're going to see I have all my objects here. They added a few things such as security group the security group tags and SSL ciphers in 7.3. They also changed AnyConnect to secure client profiles. Under policies, you're going to see it looks basically the same, which I accidentally closed 7.1. Oops. Anyway, let us go back to PuTTY really quick. Now, the last thing I want us to talk about is the Configure Manager. This is where you can configure it for a deletion, an add, or a local manager. Now, when we said we wanted it to be managed by FTD or the local manager, this is in essence what we were doing, Configure Manager Local. If we want to have an FMC manager, we have to come in here and provide the host name, IP address, and or IPv6, as well as a couple of other things. So once we get FMC up and running and talk about that application a little bit, we're going to add both my firewalls to FMC, and we can move along with that. All right, last but not least, one of the things I wanted to talk about was high availability. You cannot configure HA because one or more interfaces is configured to obtain from DHCP. Yeah, if you have DHCP anywhere, you cannot use HA. All right, whatever. But let me open back up my NTR FP01 because I don't have DHCP anywhere here. You can click on the Learn What is High Availability, which will open up a manuals page, and it'll talk about failover, which I do have to get this out there. If you look at the documentation for the Firepower 1010, it says HA active is allowed. The problem is what they don't tell you is that it's only allowed if you're running the ASA software, because the ASA software has the ability to do virtual routers or virtual device contexts. Yeah, so Firepower is active standby only. We also have to worry about failover and stateful failover links, but we'll get to that later. However, this is a nice little how to do for you. Once we click on Configure, we can ask how high availability works. Once again, you have an active product and a standby product. The state link and the failover link, you can connect between them, so of course stateful and configuration gets replicated. So the reason for that is if you create a TCP connection to a web server, that is a stateful connection. It will actually take that connection and says this source, this destination, TCP source and destination ports. It will replicate that information to the secondary device. So if the primary fails, that state will still be up, active, and running during failover. When you come over here, you can select the role of the device, in this case primary or secondary. This one will be my primary when we get to it. But you're going to notice we have a failover link and a stateful link. You can use the same stateful failover link as the failover link, so you don't necessarily need to have two links. But if you're running in a production high throughput environment, you really want to make sure these two links are one of two things: port channeled and dedicated. So my failover link will be port channeled and my stateful link will be port channeled. And then I'll get me 2 gigabits per second aggregate bandwidth for my failover and state. You select the interface that you want to use. You specify an IP address, a secondary IP address, and a net mask. Now, since this is about HA, you do not have to specify a secondary IP address. I believe back in the days of ASA you had to. So like 192.168.1.1 was active primary. 192.168.1.2 was the standby address, so you can still access the device. I don't recall if that was a requirement in the ASA. However, it is not a requirement with firepower. The only thing that the secondary IP allows us to do is to monitor the interface for more than state, or link state, I should say. So like primary and secondary, well, they will talk to each other, kind of like how HSRP or VRRP or BFD communicate, just to make sure that they can reach each other. Once again, not necessary, but in a critical environment, it's really good to have a standby IP. You can also do an IPsec encryption key. You can configure an IPsec encryption key with consistent settings. Both devices will become active after you activate. Okay. So one of the things you're also going to notice here, in FMC, you do not have to specify an encryption key. FMC will generate an encryption key for you automatically and apply it to both HA devices. So keep that in mind. So that kind of does it for a little intro to, the initial configuration of a Firepower 1010. Once again, I really wanted us to talk about high availability, so think of this as a teaser, because we're going to do the HA after we upgrade this device to 7.3 in FMC. So for now, until we get into the next FMC video, I'll see you later.